Well, hello and good morning and welcome to another episode of the Health Hub. My name's Garry Borman. I'm a qualified naturopath and I practice at a clinic called Feeling Great Naturally, which is in Cleveland in the Redlands in sunny Australia. Health Hub is all about taking what's in the news, what might be topical, and putting it into an easy to understand and easy assimilate format for you, taking out all the BS and the spin that can be added into so many articles, taking out the hype also, and just making it into something that is actually going to be beneficial to you. For me, I've been in practice about 14 years. I'm a degree qualified naturopath, nutritionist and herbalist. And from there, I'd just like to share that information with you so that you can be happier and your friends can be happier, healthier, and living better lives in general. So as we do every week, we need to start the obligatory timer and read out the disclaimer. The following segment should be considered as information, education, and entertainment only. It is not designed to replace professional individualised recommendations and does not infer ceasing prescription medications. If the information presented here causes concerns about your current health regime, discuss these concerns with the prescribing clinician or a qualified healthcare practitioner in a proper clinical environment. So that doesn't mean the local health food store, because really they're not well equipped to be able to take your case history, take down all of your diet lifestyle concerns as well as medications, etc. It also doesn't mean the person over the back fence who's walking the dog just going past, hey, by the way, I've got crabs, what can you do to help me? And certainly none of those people that have just taken on their latest MLM distributorship and who've done a 15-second course in just what to prescribe that's got the best PV for this month for you. Find some of those are just a little more damaging than beneficial, unfortunately. Some products are good, but unfortunately it's just pretty hard to pick those out. Anyway, moving forward to today's show. We'll start with water. And yes, to dry or not to dry your clothes indoors. Interesting story on that one. Aussies not nuts about nuts. That's my title, made that one up. Oh yes, this week brought to you as every other week by MyActive, the wonderful arthritic pain medication. Make it part of your pain management regime and you'll find you'll have a much better winter. And whooping cough, morphing into a superbug. Interesting stuff that we've been able to put together on that one. And a person from Sri Lanka going to town on how their natural diet is being ignored in preference of Western drugs given this time of worldwide crisis. Some really interesting stuff in that as well. So stay right to the end for some interesting info. But kicking off, to dry or not to dry? That is the question. I think Shakespeare actually asked that, didn't they? The article was called "Why Drying Your Clothes Indoors is a Really Bad Idea." Not just a bad idea, but apparently a really bad one. And had a little video embedded into it, "The Killer in Our Homes." So it was all about mould and the problems that lurk within our homes and how mould is becoming more and more common in households as well. They focused from just getting rid of mould in that perspective, but there is a lot more to mould and the damages that it can do. Recently completed another 5 hours of postgraduate education on mould toxicity, some of the nice chemicals that moulds let off and what they can do to your body. But fortunately, knowing all that, we also went into how to get rid of it and how to get rid of those chemicals from your body and get back to normal health. Because yeah, over the years I've seen a couple of people with some pretty nasty health issues from chronic mould exposure, so certainly can knock you around, so not to be taken too lightly. But the story, yes, as we head into the colder months and wetter days, quite often we'll be bringing clothes inside to dry them on the airers or using the clothes dryers, and those clothes dryers, they put a lot of humidity into the house. And a person called Ibrahim Ek, E-C-H, Ek, right, deed poll that one, dude. He is an OH&S consultant with Safety and Environmental Services and apparently is an expert in damp and mould. So he went on to say that when there is rain around, the overall humidity increases, which is dead right. 100% humidity equals precipitation, that equals rain. And in some states, especially up here in Queensland, we have pretty high humidity most of the year round. But certainly, those winter months will be up around 90% quite frequently. And he said if moisture becomes trapped, the temperature rises, and mould loves these conditions. Yeah, a little bit of dust and some mould spores and they're off. He did say that if you've got a water leak and don't take swift action, you can actually get mould generation within 48 to 72 hours, so 2 to 3 days if you haven't tended to that. So leaky pipes, very, very important to tend to. And if you can see a little bit of mould, like up in the corner of the ceiling, something like that, where you've got a leak, when it's coming through the gyprock, you've got a problem that's been there for a while, and you really do need to tend to that quickly, because exit mould doesn't. It covers it up, it might get rid of stuff on the surface, but everything that's behind it that's caused that mould to come through potentially, that really needs to be remedied, and that can be all the gyprock replaced, or even bits of timber replaced, unfortunately. What does he say? He goes on to say that he recommends drying with the air conditioner on to remove moisture from the house. That could be a little expensive, unfortunately, but yes, the evaporators that modern air conditioners have. He also said there is no causative link between mould and illness. Well, dude, stick to your own stuff. Yeah, there is. We certainly know there's been a lot of links between respiratory illnesses and conditions and general unwellness. Skin conditions especially can flare up. Moulds make mycotoxins. They protect themselves from harm, and these mycotoxins do not agree with human beings, and in particular the bacteria theory. So the original antibiotics, penicillin, was based on mouldy bread. Most of us know that one. This is because mould and bacteria don't live in the same space happily. So moulds produce these mycotoxins, and they kill the bacteria around them, which is why it's pretty bad when we have Candida in particular gets into our gut and starts wreaking some havoc with the bacteria that are supposed to be in there. So that symbiotic relationship that we have gets pretty heavily damaged. And that's where even exposure to other sorts of moulds, aspergillus and stuff like that, they can come into play and be a bit nasty for us. It can lead to immune suppression, hormone disruption with one of the chemicals too, and a general suppression of nutrient absorption, so you can get quite run down. I would recommend, if you're going to run your air conditioner, you probably see someone to give it a bit of a clean and service first. Just make sure the filters are clean and not sucking dust through. Nothing more disgusting than when you actually get that done for the first time. You go, oh my God, look at that up in the head unit, the bit up in the corner. Often there's mould in there because there's a lot of moisture. You'll often see it in summertime with water droplets there, and unchecked, that suddenly becomes mouldy, and you're blowing all of that nice mould containing air and spores all throughout the house and just making a problem a lot worse. If you've got mould, I'd get an expert in, or at least if it's only a very minor case, look how to do it properly, because you can release the spores and actually spread it, making it worse. And like I said, exit mould doesn't necessarily get rid of it. Bleaches and chlorines, they tend to just bleach it and make it all white so you can't see it anymore. There was a really good show around a few years ago called Is Your House Killing You? It was on SBS. There was a guy, Professor Peter Dingle, and I think he's from Perth. He did 2 series, and they did a couple on mouldy houses. One of those was in southeast Queensland, living in the rainforest, and all of the family, they had numerous just little ills. It might have been a little bit of asthma, might have been some skin issues, but generally they were unwell all the time. They went through their house and found there was a lot of mould in there, and took serious restoration. They ripped the whole house apart, got rid of all their books, cleaned everything up, and magically all these people got better. So you can't downplay this, but if you do have mould on books and papers and stuff like that, if you don't have a professional to clean it, you're really going to have to throw them away. Anything else I got in there? Same family as Candida got that. Yeah, we can see symptoms such as mental fog. That can be a real big one. Digestive issues, poor sleep, even bloating, weight gain, and the big one is carbohydrate cravings. So looking for those chocolates or chips, something that's easy energy, even breads, biscuits, they can be a sign. We have our own protocol in here to rebuild the gut and get it out of the gut as well. The other thing I would recommend, make sure you've got plenty of ventilation in the house, so where you can open windows, do so. Let some cross flow of the breeze come through. And in particular, looking for areas like cracks and crevices. So the track that your sliding window might sit on, And another really big place is where there's no airflow. So behind bookshelves and beds, like down on the skirting boards, you'll often find there's a bit of mould living on that at first you think's dust, and when you get closer you go, ooh, that's just disgusting. So keep on top of it, keep yourself well, and if you do have a bit of exposure, certainly I've dealt with it a fair bit for a couple of years now. When we had the big floods back here, 2010, 2011, about 3 months later, saw a lot of people with candida/mould issues, and we just did the gut rebuild protocol and had a pretty good result. So all is not over if you can't avoid it, and if you are wondering why you've got that mystery issue going on, maybe it's mould. Here we go. Oh, next article. Aussies are just not nuts about nuts. Apparently, just 2% of Australians are eating the recommended 30 grams of nuts per day, according to a study by the University of Newcastle. This study was also funded by Nuts for Life. No, I shan't comment on mental health with that. So obviously there was a little bit of a bias in there. But what they did find is that nuts, even in the form of like nut bars, muesli bars, there was up to 60% of the people surveyed didn't consume any nuts at all. And whether this is because they might have had sensitivities to it or perceived sensitivities, nut allergies are out there and on the rise for some reason. Australia, the allergy capital of the world. Yeah, lots of people just avoided it or had very, very, very little. So I'm guessing the ones where they had like a couple of grams intake was because they had a muesli and nut bar for lunch or morning tea as a bit of a snack. But the lead researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Neal, said the recommended intake of nuts is associated with a 29% reduction in the risk of heart disease, 15% reduction of cancer, 13% of type 2 diabetes, and 15% reduced death from all causes. Look at that, even hit by a bus, eaten by crocodiles. Helps reduce that as well. There you go. Australians who ate nuts regularly also had higher intakes of key nutrient groups, including fibre, iron, phosphorus, magnesium, and vitamin E. And yeah, also most nuts are really good sources of vitamin B. Did that thing say zinc? No, it didn't. But when we talk nuts and seeds, especially our sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, really good sources of zinc. That is a plant-based source as opposed to just the flesh-based sources. Yes, Dr. Neal said she theorised the lack of consumption may have been linked to the thought that nuts can actually make you fat because of the fat content. That's been disproven repeatedly. Certainly a healthy diet does have a reasonable amount of fats in it because fats don't make you fat. They're energy dense, they keep you feeling full for longer, so you tend not to be wanting to reach for those naughty snacks. And if you've got a bit of mold infection, reaching for those bread-like snacks. The oils that tend to be in nuts are essential fatty acids, and they're called essential because we need them and we can't make them. We have to ingest them, and primarily there's a form of omega-3 and 6. Yeah, there's 9s and a couple other ones in there. I think there might be an omega-12. No studies done on it, so no point bringing it up. But we need to have good supplies of these oils as part of a balanced, healthy diet. And so, as we can see from this chart, don't spill the water, omega-3s, they go down this healthy pathway, and that's our anti-inflammatory pathway, so really good for us. Too much omega-6, this is the stuff that gets added into a lot of things, so when you buy packet mixes, cans, etc., they'll use generally a high omega-6 oil, like corn oil, cottonseed oil, etc. Predominantly, this will take you down the inflammatory pathway. Think inflammation, hurts, sore joints, take my active. But yeah, this is where we can have a lot of pain and inflammation going on. So we need to have plenty of omega-3s in our diet, and we need to get this through numerous sources, but fish is a really good one. But also our nuts are a pretty reasonable sort of source. So if you're not eating a lot of fish, you're going to have to find it through oils, olive oils, or just snacking on nuts. Keep yourself full and have a better diet. Mars bars might be more fun, but they're certainly not good for you in the long run. The other thing to consider is stuff like that one. That's just a can of red salmon. That's a really good source of oils. Throw it away. And it bounced. One of those, and I did a quick read, that had 600 milligrams of EPA, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, eopenotenionic acid. That's one of the good things. 800 milligrams of DHA, that's the stuff that's really good for the brain. Brain tends to be made up of DHA, so really, really good stuff, especially for babies, pregnant ladies. And 500 milligrams of omega-6, so fantastic. That would be the equivalent of popping in at least 3 fish oil tablets. There we go. And you still got to eat. So, can of salmon a few days a week, fantastic, with some salad or vegetables. Look at that balanced meal. So you're going to get your fibre in there, you're going to get good oils, can't go wrong. Good source of protein also. With the sort of nuts that you choose, I think we all know peanuts are not a nut, peanuts are a legume. And things like Brazil nuts, not grown in Australia. Australia doesn't have any selenium in the soil because Brazil nuts are a really good concentrator of selenium. And selenium is essential for correct cell division. We use it in some cancer protocols. And most definitely, thyroid health. Selenium is essential for making correct thyroid hormones. And when we look at some of the biggest causes of illness being cancers, and the highest prescribed drugs is for thyroid disorders, clearly a couple of Brazil nuts every day, and all you need is anywhere between 2 and 6, that's plenty, so you don't need to have heaps. Handful of nuts every single day, can't go wrong, be healthier, happier, and live a better life. Alrighty, as we head into winter, as we talk about every week, MyActiv, MyActiv, this is just the best stuff to be taking to avoid your aches and pains through winter. We've got a few people that take it prophylactically, and they have found that instead of being in pain and discomfort all through winter, that they go through winter quite easily. We've got a great video on the site as well. One of our people's been taking it for 3 years, and instead of being woken up from joint pain, they sleep through. It's fantastic. Oh, and so I lean on my nuts. Yeah, some of us, nuts by the bulk. I'm not one of those who has a problem with my consumption nuts. Love them, and most days, I'd say, 5 days a week, having a good couple of handfuls. As we move to the next topic, whooping cough. Now this is a bit of a polarizer because whooping cough can really stir up a lot of emotions in people, and certainly with the anti-vaxxers who are going, no, whooping cough vaccine all bad. There is not going to be any comment on vaccines, whether you should or shouldn't, in this article. I'll just be presenting the facts as they stand. So, by definition, this is from Goldman's Cecil Medicine, 24th edition, published in 2012. Pertussis is what whooping cough is correctly known as. It's an acute respiratory illness with potentially protracted clinical course. It is caused by infection with Bordetella pertussis, and that's what the vaccine is all about, or related members of the genus, especially Bordetella parapertussis. Pertussis is not solely a paediatric illness, i.e. not just for children, and the greatest increases in incidence in recent years have been in adolescents and adults. So when we've been hearing about the resurrection of whooping cough, and it's becoming a big deal again, and people are blaming dropping of vaccine schedules and people aren't vaccinating against it, this isn't necessarily true. Because the parapertussis, I've got it further in the article, there is actually no vaccine for it. So if you presented into the GP's clinic with the classic symptoms, you've had this whooping sort of cough, which is typical of it. Oh, that's terrible just doing it. They'll straight away go, it's whooping cough, or they'll say it's pertussis. But what caused it? Is it the Bordetella pertussis or Bordetella parapertussis? So one there is a vaccine for, the other one there is no vaccine for. So unfortunately, you can be fully vaccinated thinking you've done the best you can and still contract this illness and still be a carrier of it. And that's where this story comes from. Dr. Lawrence Liu is a researcher on that one, and he was actually saying that there was a whooping cough epidemic from 2008 to 2012, saw 140,000 cases with nearly 40,000 in 2011. And he said what's actually been happening is there's been, because it's a bacteria, strains are evolving to evade the vaccine-generated immunity. Because he's saying that the bacteria is becoming smarter at colonising and feeding off unwitting hosts, whether they have been vaccinated or not. So, like I said, this isn't a story for or against vaccination, just telling what is changing out there. He said it is therefore possible for a vaccinated person to contract whooping cough bacteria without symptoms materialising, which then means they're a carrier, unfortunately. And in one article that I read, they're saying that parapertussis can last about 21 days and the regular pertussis up to 59, so the fully blown whooping cough. So that's probably the biggest distinguishing point. They call the parapertussis milder and shorter in the duration of symptoms, whereas the fully blown pertussis is a lot longer and a bit nastier, well, a lot nastier. He's also gone on to say that the vaccine also wanes quickly. So he's pleading for a better way to stop spread of it. He's also said it's more common during spring. Didn't know that. I thought it would have been winter. And spreads through infected persons, coughs, sneezes, and the others breathe in the bacteria. With the treatment, they do tend to go for antibacterials, so your antibiotics, but this is just an attempt to kill the bacteria itself and stop spreading. It doesn't necessarily help with symptoms, unfortunately. Where this really does come down to is staying well. We talk about this a lot. If you can stay well so that as soon as you do get exposed to any bacteria that might be, someone's coughed, you've walked through the vapour, your immune system will jump on that quickly and dispose of it quickly, rather than it starting to spread throughout your body and then you become a carrier whether you get symptoms or not. And with pertussis, it can take a couple of weeks before the symptoms actually eventuate. It's not like 2 days suddenly you're coughing. At least a week is what the norm is. So, the old story, making sure you get lots of zinc is great, making sure your immune system is nice and primed with other things. We've got the Rybrax, we've got the Kill Everything formula that we've got here, vitamin C, everything into echinaceas, vitamin A's. There's lots of things that you could and should do, and you can do as part of your regular diet just to make sure your immune system is as healthy as it can possibly be. Try to reduce your stress in these crazy times and making sure plenty of sleep. There are other things that do have an impact on how effective your immune system is. If you do happen to come in contact with something nasty and you've got an ongoing cough, a product we've developed here called Cough Crusher. Developed that a few years ago when there was another nasty flu getting around. A couple of local docs were calling it the 90-day flu because you'd clear the major symptoms in 2 weeks, but the cough would just hang for a couple of months. We found with this product, the Cough Crusher, that 2 or 3 days we could really bring that cough under control quite significantly and often get rid of it. So there you go. Something to think about. Stay well. Don't get whooping cough. It is nasty. You don't want to spread it. Vaccine or not, but we do have some stuff, so all is good. It's feeling great naturally. Okay, the last one for the day, we'll read through this pretty quick. It is pretty well a rant from a person in South Africa, no, Sri Lanka. They were going on about how their natural diet is being ignored, and they're saying that we need to recognise that their indigenous food is replete with almost magical medicinal benefits that are a luxury for some Western nations. They say that we do this because health is firmly rooted in knowledge and confidence in our medical and food heritage. We do not need to wait for the West to sell us pandemic vaccines when we do not know just how or how many such pandemics would be in store in this age of virus and vaccine intrigue. Interesting comments there. Yeah, it's pretty true. Who saw coronavirus coming? And there will be more to come. Don't worry about that. Yes, instead of vaccine against all ills will be in how we educate every child, every adult, and techniques of immune boosting on how cells can regenerate and the ability for the body to resist and fight infections. This is clearly, when it was put in English, a couple of words are missing there. I think they mean that we need to not rely on a vaccine against all ills, because that'll just never come. Parapertussis, no vaccine at all. Regular pertussis, it's evolving to evade the current vaccines. They did make an interesting comment from a Dr. George Clark of Philadelphia. He was quoted as saying, after reading one of the their health books, the Charaka Samhita, an ancient text on Ayurvedic medicine. As I go through a part of the Charaka, I come to the conclusion that if present-day physicians drop all modern drugs and chemicals from their pharmacopoeia and adopt the methods of Charaka in treating disease, there will be less work for undertakers and fewer invalids in the world. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, but you know, some of the subjects that I did in my studies were food as medicine, so there is clearly something to it. We know that there is a lot that we can do. You need to keep your diets healthy because bad diet will make you less healthy. That is well known. It says here, if you do not consider food as medicine in your diet, then one day you will have to consume medicine as food. This is exactly what the Western world has done, consume manufactured substance euphemistically called food, not missing, food-like substances is what I call it, to encourage greed and craving alone, and then consumed medicine as food. We see the difference between the death toll of the coronavirus in countries such as India and Sri Lanka and the so-called developed world. So then there's fighting words. So does it stack up? Well, at the time of checking these figures, Sri Lanka population 22 million, infections 797, with 9 deaths. Not bad at all. India, population 1.353 billion in 2018, so more than that, so it might even be pushing 1.4 billion. That's a lot of people. 53,000 cases. That's pretty damn good, with 1,785 deaths. If you take that versus 330 million approximately in America, where they've got somewhat 50,000 that they've said have died now, that is pretty impressive about the countries that we would call, and to finish this off, at the time of writing, both countries had experienced peaks in their daily death tolls, their death rates, and they're actually reducing. So it looks like they've flattened the curve, the FTC. So they've had this and they're coming back down the other side. So in countries that we would say third world to a lesser degree because they are quite poor, we would expect lower degrees of hygiene, therefore much higher incidences of infection and death. And it seems that these countries promoting Ayurveda, and in particular a nice healthy natural diet, and their diets, they load up with a lot of herbs and spices as well. And in my food as medicine subjects, we did cover a lot of these, you know, things like oregano and thyme, basil, rosemary, you know, holy basil is very much an Ayurvedic favourite. These are all good for the human body, and we can get so much benefit out of taking these on a regular basis. Chime in with your garlics, your gingers. You know, everyone knows about turmeric. It's just good for so many things. So perhaps we can learn from what some people would call the third world, because they know what they're doing as far as staying healthy. Population of 1.4 billion is nothing to sneeze at. China is up around there too. So where the countries are very poor, they seem to have been very effective in using traditional medicines and foods in keeping themselves a lot healthier than the Western world. So, as they say, that's the Health Hub for another week. Off we go to you, Mr. ScoMo. Don't lock us in, give us food and vegetables. Hopefully you've found some insight from this week, found some benefits, and you're inspired to immediately go racing down to the fruit and veggie shop and get some fresh food and cook up and go crazy. So until next week, as always, be kind to a stranger, because one day that stranger just might be you. We'll see you next week.